Ready? Hello, I'd like to call to order the April 25th Health and Ed Committee meeting. And we will start with calling the roll before we move on to the minutes. Carla.
Commissioner Oliver?
She has texted, she is stuck in traffic, but so we'll look for her to add her.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Davidson?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Boyd? Commissioner McMurray?
Here.
Commissioner Gooch?
Here.
Commissioner Dodd?
Here.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, have you been able to look at the minutes and prepared for a motion?
Yes, Chairman, I have reviewed the minutes from our March meeting. I find them to be in order, and without objection, I move for their approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Next item of business is the Health Department report. Director Cumbie, join us, and for the audience, please state your name and position.
And that will reflect our priorities of protecting with our disease intervention, promoting good health with our health education outreach, diabetes outreach, community participation, and improving with our primary care, clinical services, and WIC programming. Everything in our report looks to be moving along as expected, and we welcome that return to normal. Some updates for you with COVID-19. The CDC does continue to rate our community level of COVID-19 as low. We still offer our free testing, rapid testing kits available Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30 at both of our clinics. Vaccines and boosters are free. The Pfizer vaccine from 8 to 10 or 1 to 3 Monday through Friday. No appointment needed, and it's available to anyone 6 months of age or older. The federal government has announced that May 11th will officially end the COVID-19 public health emergency declaration. This is an end to the emergency response and many of the policy allowances that were included in the public health emergency declaration. Just last week, the Department of Health and Human Services announced a bridge program to maintain access to COVID-19 vaccines and treatments for the uninsured. Through a $1.1 billion public-private partnership, vaccines and treatments will continue to be made available through the existing public health infrastructure, as well as local pharmacy chains through December 2024. More details on that as they arrive. Flu shots are still free and available during our walk-in hours of 8 to 10, 1 to 3, while supplies last. And we do have a blood drive coming up. We would like to announce we're partnering with the American Red Cross on July 14th to sponsor a blood drive at our downtown Murfreesboro location at 100 West Burton Street. We will have more specific information on how to register or when to come by as that date draws near, but we wanted to share that with you now so you could get that on your calendar, Friday, July 14th. And that does conclude our report.
Thank you, Director. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Cumbie, what happens when the pandemic is officially over? Will vaccinations for COVID be handled similar to what flu shots are? Would they be like available and recommended once a year or something like that?
That certainly does look, and thank you for that question. That certainly does look what they're moving toward, and speculation is that it would be a fall shot, much like the flu shot, and recommended for adults, but also due to special considerations for the immunocompromised and other people who might be more in need, the elderly. They may make that available year-round. So, there would be an annual push to encourage people to utilize it, but also availability for those who need it. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Phillips. Have we voted on that? Sorry. I'll entertain a motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Director.
You have the CARES Act funding. We have one more item.
Oh, we do have
Is that on your-
a grant item, so please proceed with that. We'll
Yeah,
do a roll
yes.
call vote on that, so thank you.
So we do have one more item before you tonight. That's the concerns an amendment to our CARES Act funding grant. And this is a grant that's specifically targeted at immunization and preparedness improvements at local health departments. It was originally approved by the County Commission and signed by the mayor in February of '22 in the amount of $75,000. That was to allow us to build a metal canopy to shelter our staff as they deliver vaccines or testing to the public. The state later decided that Rutherford Health Departments qualified for several additional renovations and increased the approved funding amount to $340,500. This would allow for improvements to our clinics, such as that metal canopy I mentioned, additional paving for traffic flow, expanded drug rooms with improved dehumidifiers and HVAC, electronic access card readers for security, and having our phone system tied into backup generators so they would always work. Now, there is no local match needed for this grant. If approved, the county would pay and then invoice the state for reimbursement. All construction would go through the county procurement and bid process. So this evening, we're asking for your approval to amend that $75,000 contract to the $340,500 amount that the state has agreed to reimburse.
Sounds very promising. Again, no match, and we trust that the Health Department will expend the money where they need it.
I move to approve the grant.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes. And we have,
Commissioner Oliver.
Aye.
thank you, thanks for reminding me of that. Next on our agenda is the Community Cares Report. And I have just a couple of items from their minutes to share, and then one just brief discussion. As we mentioned last month, they did declare in their minutes that payback to the county for the funds they use to remodel their building will occur in May or June. And Christy Houston has submitted another $203,000 as part of their commitment. I did notice that they have some current COVID cases out there, so just be aware of that. And I did highlight the board announced that they're going to have a grand opening and announcement of the new administrator. And they've put out a save the date for June the 8th, 2023, from 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. Grand opening and ceremony at the nursing home, June the 8th, 2:30 to 6:30. And the last item I have for community care is there is an opportunity to have a meeting out there. We decided last month to wait until our budget season is over. So I think that we look at our calendars and consider August. We often don't do a July meeting because we have an extra meeting in June when we secure the tax levy. That being the case, we may choose to meet in July at the community care, or you guys may want to take July off and we meet in August. So if you would, let's make that decision, and then when we meet in June, let's lock that down. And we would have a board meeting at their place. We might do it. The hours may change. but let's get that resolved next month. And finally, I have been informed that the attorney for CCRC has been invited to property management this week. So there are still some questions that are kind of floating between both committees. One has the physical plant and one has the lease and so forth. So I'm under the impression that the attorneys will be at property management this Thursday at 5:30 if anybody wants to listen in. That does not need a motion, I don't believe. That was just for your information. All right, we are moving on to,
Quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a point of order. Since we don't have anybody to come do that community care report, why is it not maybe prudent for us to just accept the report, even if you motion to accept the report, even though you present it?
I'd be, by all means,
Because it is a report,
sure. And
like
I was
the other reports we receive. I was just
ex
curious.
officio, but I'm most comfortable with that. If somebody wants it, then let's do that. So I've made some comments regarding the minutes, and in order to put those into our minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve my comments.
I do. I make a motion to approve the CCRC comments reports.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. And what we have next is the Finance Director report, and the Finance Director, Smith, has requested that we move that report into the body of the school board report because it's apropos to the amendments. So we're just going to move that down. And I was hoping that the Director of Schools and perhaps his Budget Director would be here. I think their vote is concluded. Okay, so they're probably en route, and they're in the same traffic I was in and Commissioner Oliver was in. And so I'm going to hear from Michael, but Trey, you may have something to start, or we wait for Jimmy. Y'all decide. Michael?
I do have one thing to cover. I'm going to leave out one thing, but I do want to cover one thing in your report. This is going to coincide with the school. Is the schools next on the agenda?
Yes.
I don't know if Dr. Sullivan wants to join us, but if you'll flip to the third page, it may be your second page because I think it's front and back. You'll see Laverne High School edition and a Blackman High edition. It would make things cleaner for us if we could have a vote to take those off the report, since there's no work being done, and I don't believe the schools have contracted any work.
The Laverne High School, the Laverne High edition,
Yeah, in Blackman.
and it's $88,970.
No, so that's just some funding that was moved there, but if you'll notice, both of those have no expenses. They were approved at the same time the other high schools were approved, and then this body and the commission chose to do the three high schools. But what this does is it allows us to clean up this report. It doesn't mean they can't come back on at a certain time, but I have to leave them on there until there's a vote to take them off.
And what was the other one? Blackman?
Yep. They should be right next to each other, a
Yeah, they
Laverne
are,
and a
they are.
Blackman. There has been nothing spent on those, and I'm looking at Trey. I don't believe we're under any contract for Laverne or Blackman High. No. So it would help us out a lot if we could have a vote to take those off of this report. That doesn't mean, like I said, that we couldn't add them back if this body wishes to explore that, but it would allow for some bookkeeping cleanup there for us.
That request is open for discussion.
Question. When you say cleanup, what do you mean? Because this was allocated for these addition, are you saying?
There's actually no money there. That's what I'm saying. Back when we talked about, a few months ago, we talked about moving funding or approving expenditures before we had funding. That's what we did for some of the high schools that y'all voted on last month. So there is actually no funding. There is only $88,970 allocated to Laverne High School. There is no money allocated, no funding obtained for Blackman. So when you see there's an original budget of $1.1 million, there's no money for that. We never went to borrow that. There's no cash anywhere for that. That was y'all approved to go out and study the I think it was 5 high school additions. Y'all voted on 3. So these projects right here just.
We were only presented 3.
That was the previous commission that
Okay.
did that. That's what I'm saying. So it would help from a bookkeeping and cleanup standpoint. Otherwise, they're going to be listed there until y'all allow me to take them off with no expenditures and no contracts.
I'm still not clear. So there's money sitting here that's not here.
There
It's
is no
basically what
money.
you're saying. So why is that there?
Because the previous commission, I think this was before my time, and Trey may want to come up here and speak to this. It was approved to go out and look at, to study five high schools. Is that right, Trey? Yes. 3 came back to the previous commission before September. Right now, these 2 projects you're sitting on here, there is no money for them.
Let me try and maybe help a little bit.
Thanks.
All right, so when we originally came before this body and before the commission, we asked for the design money for all 5 schools. In a subsequent vote, the school system decided we were only going to move forward with 3. There is still no, well, there's not, there will be. There's still technically no money in Smyrna, Laverne, or Oakland either. We've borrowed from other places because we have had some expenditures. When you all go to the bond market, they will actually borrow the money and put it in those 3 categories. So Laverne and Blackman, those were the dollar figures that were approved for us to use in the future. But when the school board decided to only do 3, that's just a placeholder so that we all remember what was approved by this commission, and we know that we've got to go back and fund it. I can't borrow money or spend money unless it's been approved. So if we had decided to go forward with Blackman or Laverne, then we could have expended money there and done the same thing we're doing at the other 3. But because we didn't, there's actually no money there.
Gotcha. Thanks. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. But does then, for our comfort level, that doesn't mean that Laverne is not going to be looked at. That doesn't say, again, I want to clarify, we're not giving up on Laverne, is my point.
No, I'm
This
saying
doesn't
when
mean
we come
are.
back, that would be another borrowing cycle, and then we can put that money back at that time. Because it's not going to be happening, I want to use the term confusing, maybe.
And Chairman, you might recall, this was part of a conversation last fall. Do you remember the conversation funded, not funded, when we first got kind of last year's version of this report? They had already allocated, before, like he said, for those designs, but we weren't going to borrow the money till we went to get this bond issued. So none of this was actually borrowed yet. So they're just saying, since we're not going to use these right now, go borrow the money, we'll put them back on when we do. That's the way I'm understanding it.
Just one quick follow-up, is the school board going to add these back into its future building or expansion project next year or the year after, or will they be back on the recommended building project?
So I obviously can't speak for the board, but my recommendation would be for at least for Laverne High School.
Thank you.
Yep, at least Laverne High School.
I want to hear that as well, Chairman. We just don't want that to be neglected. If there's no further questions, or if we're comfortable with the intent of this, I would entertain a motion to remove Laverne and Blackman from the Fund 189. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries. And that now we will move on to school report. Correct. Let's do a verbal, and if you will look at your SharePoint, we have 2 amendments. All those documents are for 2 amendments. A third amendment did not make it to the SharePoint, and I think we can do a verbal. We can add it to the minutes in the written word, and then we'll do a roll call vote or discussion, and then if it moves forward, we'll have a vote. So proceed.
All right, so
Please announce your name and title.
Yes. Jimmy Sullivan, Rutherford County Director of Schools. So thank you, Commissioners. So first thing we have is, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards because I'm sure there will be several. So we have a Fund 141 General Purpose School Budget Amendment. This amendment is to fund the purchase of the building and property at 814 South Church Street. This property is listed with Matthews Real Estate Investment Services. Has been negotiated to be acquired in the amount of $1,161,460. This property will be funded by amending General Purpose Fund 141 by decreasing 3,900 unassigned fund balance and increasing capital outlay account 76100799 other capital outlay in the amount of $1,161,460.
And we will hold right there. Okay. And Dr. Sullivan spoke very energetically, very fast then. We're used to running these fast. And I'll just say Dr. Sullivan has been at a interesting board meeting, and he's dashed across town to get here on time. So we can all just catch our breath. And
Which is why I had to go back and get my other notebook, because I brought school board notebook, not health and ed notebook. So I had to go back to my car.
I can tell you're in a great rush.
Yes.
So, Commissioner McMurray, did you have some questions? You need to read this again, or just get us started?
Now, can you just give a little bit of clarification on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so a couple things. One of our biggest needs outside of our additions is an alternative school. We are struggling with an alternative school. We have 2 alternative schools, Daniel McKee and Smyrna West. We have not added seats since the late 2000s, and so this is a potential third site. We also realize the ask that we have of County Commission of having to fund all of our growth. We have a very healthy fund balance, so we have a fund balance of $73,639,462 estimated right now. So in purchasing this at a fund balance and not having to ask the commission to fund it, that takes our fund balance from 15.2% to 14.9%. So we're still a very healthy fund balance. I do envision us probably having to do about $500,000 in renovations, HVAC, different things to make it suitable for an actual school type setting, but that would still put us well below what building an additional facility would cost ourselves. And I'm happy to discuss questions around this as well.
Your contract, it looks like Matthews Real Estate Investments, and you have a due diligence.
Here 90 days, yes.
Okay. And you're having professionals look at the physical plant?
We are. We had a structural engineer review it coming this Friday. Come on up, Trey. This one's been fast.
Last Friday, I met 2 different consultants that work for us. We did a mold and asbestos review of the property. This Friday, I will be meeting our structural engineer. They will be doing a structural analysis of the building to make sure it is still sound. We have reviewed the roofing. We have also reviewed the HVAC components, and we will have a property value evaluation done as well. So yes, ma'am, we are doing our due diligence over the next 90 days.
14 South Church. It's by the Farm Bureau building and Jennings and Ayers and Bubba Dempsey's accounting. Kriya.
Question, please, Mr. Chairman, because mine is cut off on my print.
Okay.
So can you read what this the explanation that you said this amendment is to do what? Because mine is cut off.
Yeah, it is decreasing our unassigned fund balance and increasing capital outlay account 76100799 in the amount of $1,161,460.
And when is the proposed opening date? Is that in here anywhere?
Yesterday would have been amazing, but realistically, I had hoped to target September 1st because students are going to be in a building that have not been in this building before. Our realistic target date's probably January 1st.
but possibly before then.
The soonest we can get seats open, there are also tenants in this building, and so we are going to have to work with tenants. Most places that are buying a real estate want to allow tenants to stay because they're paying a lease. We need the tenants out so we can put students in there. And so we have to work with each tenant. Their contracts go multiple years, but we have an out clause in the contract.
And how many students do you anticipate housing?
So it is 3 floors. In the basement, we would hope between 40 and 50 at the bare minimum. There is a second floor that we're going to, based on what the cost is and what the structural engineer comes up with, we have the option to make that additional alternative school, or to also make that more of a setting to serve some of our more severe special education students that we are contracting with a different vendor at this time. I'm not going to mention the vendor because I got in trouble last time I did that. But that would be our second, the base floor. The top floor very well could be office spaces for special education or a different one as well, because we are needing that.
And will these students be relief for current alternative, or will you have room for additional alternative students?
So it'll be relief from what we currently have.
And in regards to public safety matters, we'll have a school resource officer and all that good stuff.
So even if that's one that we have to fund ourselves first because this happened, but I know as the sheriff's kind of looking at their budget as well, we have an additional building that would be a priority beforehand, so we would have to look at possibly subsidizing that for the sheriff's department and doing a transfer.
And this sounds like a good buy. So do you know what is the square footage? And I'd like your Commissioner Wilson's opinion on the price per foot.
12,000 square feet.
Yeah, and if I remember right, I believe this price was actually higher. So this is actually
A negotiated.
That was a negotiated price that they got it down. And this is a tremendous need for our school system to produce more seats, alternative school. This need is not even met by this property. We're going to need even more. I'm going to move for its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this purchase. Any other discussion?
Mr. Superintendent, you said the fund balance would go from 17% to 15%?
Sorry, it's at 73 million, so it will go from 15.2% to 14.9%.
Before we vote.
Estimated, yeah.
Thank you.
Director Smith had a comment before the vote.
You asked a question about SROs. You will see that as part of the Sheriff's Office budget coming next week on Thursday.
And you mentioned your fund balance. I have one other question before we vote, please. And you dipped into your fund balance last year. Yes. And you just mentioned your 15% of your budget is currently in fund balance. Is that anticipating paying back the previous draw into that fund balance?
Michael, did we actually hit fund balance last year? I'm not sure we actually hit it.
No, that 15, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's very close to 15%. Let me two things. One, fund balance changes every single day. And number two, that number he read does take into account their current budgeted deficit and takes into account last year's actual revenues and expenditures.
So it's an improvement over the appearance when we began the budget year. It's an improvement.
Not technically, because they do have about 28 million in a budgeted deficit this year. They have a 15% fund balance after the $28 million budgeted deficit.
Thank you.
That is separate.
To me, that's a comforting number. And I know the mayor has been expressing a lot of energy in a $64 million debt, and it sounds like that number may be a better number when all of our books get closed in the year.
And Chairman, with the unfilled positions alone, I can't imagine what that will look like once we actually get to the end.
Thank you. And I didn't mean to, I think this is apropos to this motion because you mentioned your budget deficit. So having heard all that, any more discussion?
Did you say when the sale will take place if this goes through the county?
Within 90 days.
Within
so we're in a
90
90-day due diligence testing right now.
And then You said you hope to have it,
I wanted September 1st. It's not going
but
to
it's
happen.
not going, okay.
The 90 days gets very close to that, yes.
If there's no further discussion, we will call the roll, please. Do we need to hear the motion? Are we good? 1.161 to purchase 814 South Church.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd.
Yes. Motion carries. Continue, please, Dr. Sullivan.
All right, thank you. So next is Fund 189 Building Projects Request. This request is to purchase the Beatty property, which is in two separate appraisals, one for 59.1 acres at $4.5 million, and the second for the house and 2.29 acres at $730,000. Total for 61.39 acres is $5.23 million. The funding for this property will come from Fund 189 Building Projects 99100-715 land account. And I believe you guys have several different places that we moved money or requested to move money around. Yep.
This is where I want to piggyback off of. You have in front of you a handout for Fund 189 proposed. And the reason it's proposed because if this passes, this will change. It will mirror what's in front of you. And what's in front of you is going to show where this money comes from. So if you look on the front page under land in front of you, you will see two amounts added there. One is from elementary, money from a future elementary school, and one is from leftover money from Plainview Elementary. That, with addition of money we already had for land for an elementary school, makes up the a little over $5 million to purchase this. Any questions there?
And the report that came in the SharePoint was Fund 189 Building Program Fund Amendment, and the color coding shows a magenta color. Those are the funds unexpended and unattached on existing projects that we approved previously, and they actually total $5,243,541. So you will move what you need, and the rest will stay in a fund balance.
And I want to add one other thing that this amendment will also change is we had one previous project that has been done. I'm looking at Trey, Roy Waldron. How long has that been done? So several years. It had $90,000 left in that. We also moved that to close out that project because it's been done for several years and allocated that for the future development of an elementary school on this property to go ahead and get that money allocated there. Now, keep in mind the reason we had to do all this is because this money has already been shared. So the good news is we don't have to share any additional money for this project or for this amendment.
So just to recap, it's the $5.23 million is coming from existing leftover money.
That's correct.
So no borrowing or anything.
That is correct.
Motion to approve, Mr.
Second.
Chair.
Any further discussion?
I do have a question, Chairman. Do we need to vote on two separate things? Do we need to approve that budget amendment and then this, or is this all covered under one? Just wanted to be sure before we get further. Okay.
If I could just recap, 60 acres for a campus, 3 schools.
2 schools.
What are they, elementary and high school?
Elementary for sure, that is priority 1. The second one would it's probably not big enough for a high school. It would either be a middle school or a combination 6-12, as we're trying to think outside the box. I'm not sure that is an area the school board wants to go back to of having more of that junior and senior high school together, but we have to do the best with the land that we have available. So that is something I've thrown out there. They didn't love it, but we're in discussion.
Let's also follow up with who owns the land?
John L. Beatty right now.
Sorry?
John L. Beatty does, it's their part.
No. Who will own the land? County?
How that works, yes, county.
County?
Yeah.
How about the property that we just approved, the building on Church Street?
County's name too then.
So using school board funds, it will be a Rutherford County purchase. Or do you have, is one more concerning to you? Jeff, do you have what is your thought?
No, years ago, we had the discussion that related to when a school outlives its life expectancy, who owns the property? And it appeared that there was some that was owned by the county, some that was owned by the school system. The county decided that every piece of property that we buy, the county will own that property, so that at some point in time it will be returned to the county for disbursement or to do whatever it wants. So it really doesn't matter who owns it, but it's cleaner for the county to own it long term. And for a project like this, long term would probably be longer than any of our lifetimes that we're here. But still, all in all, the county owns that property. So the school board has management responsibility, but the county still owns the property for whatever reason that the county wants to do with it at some point in the future. When it's no longer a school on it, I'd say.
I will add, we still do have some older school properties that are in the school board's name, but in the most recent future, all new properties added has been under the county. But we do still have some older properties, that are still in the school board's name.
Old Rockville Gym is still in there. I think that the minutes need to reflect that this contract, whatever the contract language is, it will be assigned, because the contract's probably under the school board. The school board's supposed to close it. If they close it, it needs to be assigned to Rutherford County. So let's get that in the minutes and if we could have, Claire, if you help me get Nick to look at that. Is that, or Jeff Reed, let's make sure Jeff and Nick talk. Thank you. I think we have, that was discussion. We have a motion and a second. Without any further discussion, call the roll, please. This is to purchase the Beatty property.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Dodge.
Yes. And I will add that I'm under the impression that the school board will not be seeking those monies be reimbursed in a future bond. So I just want to say I'm grateful that y'all are putting great effort into utilizing your fund balance to the benefit of the commission and the taxpayer.
We realize we're a big ask, so.
Mr. Superintendent, does this come with any strawberries or anything, or no?
Unfortunately, it's not that part of the property. It's unfortunate.
Just wanted to check.
Definitely unfortunate.
And I'm sorry, Director, if we don't have strawberries, the city has provided sewer for that property, correct? And so you were looking at. Okay, so at one point you were looking at potentially some additional acreage for additional drip fill?
Yeah, we will not need that.
That's off. This doesn't cover that. You reduced your ask. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. It's county. And the road right-of-way is currently county as well. And I think we have an additional amendment that's not in your SharePoint.
We have two. No, we have the $900,000 for architect fees. We aren't going to do that. So here is my, Commissioner Gooch, this is my realization that I did not do well in putting these two. So this is sad little face, Dr. Sullivan, based on the commission meeting the other day. So
let me see that sad face.
It was sad little face, Dr. Sullivan. Yep, sad face. That really got the win from the commission meeting the other night. So I appreciate it greatly. Yes, I got a lot. Yes, our team got a lot of mileage out of it too. So thank you. They sure did. So, that's perfect. I loved it. So first thing that we have is connected straight with that property. So it is the engineering construction requesting to approve funding for architectural design services for the Beatty property. This request will be based on the anticipated construction cost in the 5-year plan, and the firm design fees will be presented to the board. Request was not to exceed $900,000 for phase 1 design. So recommended approval, motion to request funding for architectural design fees not to exceed $900,000. So this is already, you want to hit it?
So, again, this is why I kind of wanted to cover this report. This is reflected in the proposed report in front of you. If you flip to, I believe it's your second page, it's going to be, yes, it's going to be the second, or it's going to be page 3 if you're looking at the page numbers at the bottom. If you look at the top of page 3, there's a project that says Future Elementary School. And right now, that project has $973,527 in there. We're requesting to move all that to architect fees. I've already reflected that as shown, but it does require a vote.
And those funds,
Are from other projects, and they have already been shared.
those funds are already in the Fund 189.
That is correct.
So it's not a request for the county to hit our fund balance and write a check to the school board.
That is correct.
Is it anticipated that the county will seek, that the school board will seek reimbursement from this when we go for bonds?
No. It would
Therefore, it's
be,
not shared.
no, it would be that once the school board comes back sometime next year, then we would go to the bond market for anything additional over this amount.
So, Mr. Chairman, so when you say the future elementary school, is it going to be for both schools or just the entire property?
We have to keep them separate for the purpose of sharing money.
Okay.
We have to share, it's a little less than 15% now on the new revised rate, but we have to share a little less than 15% of all local revenues, including building for an elementary school with the Murfreesboro City School System. However, this money has already been shared, and that's why we keep it separate under projects, and then that's why we move from the already shared money to fund this. But yes, this money is already in Fund 189, and it is, how it got there is it was left over from previous projects over the years.
Commissioner Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, please. I'm trying to just see which number you're talking about. The one that says total project, is that the line you're speaking of? Or are you speaking of money left over from Roy Waldron?
So I'm looking at the top of page 3 at that future elementary school. There is $973,527,
Speaking
which
of,
is those.
that's what you're speaking of.
Yes, they're just two numbers added together.
Gotcha.
They're asking for approval to spend up to $900,000 for architect and design fees for that school. And we would utilize that additional $73,527 for that project when that time comes.
Yes.
And so what we're trying to do here is we realize, again, that we are a big ask on the county commission. So the funding that we have left from other projects, we are trying to go ahead and reduce what our ask would be for an elementary school with extra funding that is left over from other projects. So this would deduct $900,000 roughly from what the future ask would be.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is real money versus what we looked at when we were looking at Laverne and Blackman, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
If there's no further discussion,
Motion to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
I did have one more question. Are we going to get a copy of that amendment for the minutes or something that we can actually have our hands on? Awesome, thank you.
We'll make sure that, so let's restate the motion, please.
So restating the motion, let me get back to that one. I'd be happy to. Engineering and Construction is requesting to approve funding for architectural design fee services for the Beatty property. This request will be based on the anticipated construction cost in the 5-year plan, and the firm design fees will be presented to the board. Request is not to exceed $900,000 for Phase 1 design only, and I do want to give Trey a shout out. Trey got our architecture design fees down about $1.5 million. So
Did the motion say it was from Fund 189 or from fund balance? I didn't quite understand.
yes, it does 189.
The motion included 180.
Yes.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Yes. Please continue.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Will the Sheriff's Department be involved with the architectural designs in regards to security and things like that?
Enter that? Yes.
Because I feel like they need to be a part of it, and that's just one.
We have a committee that's based on SWAT and the SROs that we meet with monthly. Patty Oser and myself, we meet with them monthly, and part of those discussions when we get to new additions, we do consult them. But we've always, or I have in my 17 years with the county, we've always consulted the SRO divisions to get there. We've moved their offices from front to back to the side based on recommendations and as times have changed, things that they recommend. So yes, we do work with them when we do our design work.
How many of you are on public safety? Oh, good deal. That's good representation. And I believe we have another item.
I have one more, and again, this is sad little face Jimmy. So it's my fault completely, guys. We passed these Thursday, and I just didn't get them to you. That's my fault. So this is an emergency request for football field lighting for Smyrna and Laverne High School. Engineering has received prices to replace poles and lights at Smyrna High School, $310,000, and Laverne High School, $320,000, due to the continued deterioration of the poles at both locations. Staff are requesting to utilize the Sourcewell purchase plan and award the contracts to Musco Lighting. Request not to exceed $650,000, utilizing ending fund balance of Fund 177.
You're going to make me cry
Why's that?
because that's what I wanted.
Well, it's needed.
Amen,
I would.
amen.
Thank you, Trey.
Turn that file to smiley face now, Dr. Sullivan.
Yes. Yes.
Smart aleck. Now that brevity's over with, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Football lights, Laverne and Smyrna. Smyrna being Laverne being 10,000 more, just nature of the lights.
Asked for, that adds it up to $630,000, but you always run into something small, wiring or something that, doesn't work, so that's why we requested not to exceed $650,000. And if we don't need that additional $20,000, it stays in Fund 177, because it is coming from our fund balance as an emergency request. Yes, sir.
Will this be ready to roll come fall, or what's the time frame?
I'm racing. That's why when Dr. Sullivan came in and I didn't see it on the agenda, I said, I need to ask. It's about 12 weeks to get the poles, because we'll be doing concrete poles and LED lighting. It takes about 12 weeks to get. Go to budget next week, full commission on the 13th, I believe that's correct. Then I can write a purchase order on Friday. So I'm cutting it close to make football season. Yes, sir.
And that's a 3% contingency, so yeah, that's certainly not much, but it's a good ask. Did we vote on that? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Dodds?
Yes. Thank you, and thank you for, again, utilizing your funds to
Mr. Chairman, if I could
degree to
ask
that.
just a couple of questions that doesn't have anything to do with probably anything, but the old lights that come down, what do we do with those things?
1988 models, so they're fairly old and out of date. Some of them we're having trouble finding bulbs for now. So these particular ones we would scrap, just because of the age and the types of bulbs.
Is it possible that there could be a statewide communication? There are some counties out there that would probably love to have
We can do them on the
19.
surplus. We can have our purchasing department put them on the surplus property list and see if there's any ask, and if there is, we'll be glad to let them have them.
That's kind of sort of what we do sometimes with old equipment that comes out of public safety. And I'm pretty sure that there's some counties out there that have lights that are way, way worse than what we're throwing away. So if we could do something like that
Sure.
and continue for some county to get use out of them, I think that would be a good deal. Also, with the architectural design, are they bid?
So state law does not allow you to bid by fee. So you can only send out an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. Once you've determined who your selected architectural firms are, then you can ask them for their fee. We sent out an RFQ about this time last year. It's the first time the school board had done it in a number of years. We had a large number of applicants. We had a committee that we put together of 7, reviewed it, narrowed it down to 4, and then we narrowed it down to 2. We've always just had one, I'm going to call it approved architectural firm. This year I requested that we have 2, and we have kind of gone through that process. And each time we have a new project, I reach out to both of those firms and ask them, tell them the size of the project and what the nature of the project is, and ask for them to submit their fee based on that particular project. This time, most of you are probably familiar with Binkley Garcia. They were bought out about 1.5 years ago. It's the same guys we've always met with. It's Godwin Mills and Kaywood. They do have a presence. Their fee for if we go forward with the Beatty property was 3%. Our other selection is Klein Sweeney. I think y'all are familiar with them. They're building a lot of the new public service stations that the county's building now. Their fee was 4.5%. Based on the size of the project, it becomes a little over $1.5 million. And it makes it very difficult not to take the one that's at 3%.
So it is competitive to a
Yes, sir.
degree. And,
Yes, sir.
And there's opportunity to save some money there.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We also will be recommending to go with the design we've used in the past. It is not the Taj Mahal design like you see our other sister school use that has all the columns and all those things, but it is a design that allows us to get a school that we've utilized, make some minor changes to it, but save funding from the architect fee and get it built as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Director. Do you have any more news?
Quick couple updates. First, so a couple big things. We're, of course, in the middle of budget season, which that's where Brian is not here. Brian's still back at the office working on compiling all of our budget information. So something that has a lot of attention, I want to make sure I clarified, and we'll do this with budget as well, and then the full commission if needed. So salary schedule was one of our number one things that we are looking at and that we have addressed. Very similar to what the County General did a couple years ago. Our classified staff were not necessarily on grades and scales with steps, so we have moved to a very similar terminology. Currently, our custodians were the lowest paid on our salary schedule. They were at $13.93. The base salary that our salary study group recommended was $15.40, and we did a 5% raise on that, so it brings it to $16.17. New certified teachers right now, and I'll go into funding here in just a minute if you'll just kind of stay with me. Certified teachers right now are at $44,930 for a brand new bachelor's with 0 years experience. The governor's requested districts to get to $50,000 by the 2026-2027 school year. So in breaking that apart, we did a 5% raise to the base. This current school year is our proposal. It brings it to $47,176. I've been very upfront with our staff and told them that based on where we look and how much we don't know about TISA, I don't envision those 5% type raises being the occurrence as we continue to move forward, because we're trying to get to that $50,000 by the year 2026. If we did a 3% cost of living adjustment raise the next 3 years, we would hit $50,000. I can't tell if that's 47 or 74. It's one of the two by the governor's timeline. So we would hit that. A couple things to talk about that. One, raises are well within in our salary schedule within our TISA kind of formula of what we are looking at. We're also being conservative with that. Something that is going to be new and hard for all of us, I think, to understand, ourselves included, is that we are very used to hearing what positions are funded out of the BEP. BEP doesn't exist anymore. And so now it is truly, this is the amount of funding you get for a student, and it goes to the district. The state is really advocating for site-based management. So if you have students, then that money goes to the school. I don't feel comfortable going down that road. Especially right now, I'm not sure with us having a centralized kind of accounting structure, we'd ever really want to go down that road. That allows some other districts do it to where you may keep 20 or 25% at the district level, and then the rest goes to the school to staff as they see fit. I'm not sure that's the best steward of taxpayer money, so that will not be my recommendation of what we are looking at. But all that to say, when we hear about how many positions are not funded in the BEP, that doesn't exist anymore. The only thing that is truly allocated is K through 3 having a class size of 20, 4 through 6 having a class size of 25, and high school going up to 30. That's the only kind of stipulations that you are looking at. Do I? Sorry.
I taught high school. 30 in the classroom.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So last thing I wanted to look at, and I don't think Brian would mention, not necessarily a surprise, but something we are trying to do and working with Michael as well. TISA is a constant moving target, is the best way I know how to put it. Brian and I are putting together our budget and meeting with principals and teams. We are trying extremely hard to actually present a balanced budget to you guys for approval. I don't know the last time the school system actually presented a balanced budget. I don't know that it's happened, but with extra, I'm sure it has at some point, with the extra TISA funding, and that will still be conservative because of I think somebody mentioned the number of teaching openings we have. We unfortunately still have a lot of teaching openings, and I don't envision that changing with us continuing to grow. So just want to give you a quick overview of what we're looking at. As I've stated multiple times, we're going to only be asking for MOE in our budget, so truly just the dollar amount, not the number of pennies. Same thing for 177, the dollar amount, not the same number of pennies, and then 143, our cafeteria, is kind of the one that's self-governing with USDA funds and then charges as well. So it's the update that I have.
Any comments on that update? Any thoughts? Thank you for that update. And just touch on enrollment. How many students you're sitting on?
So we're sitting right over 51,000 still. It is not slowing down. I take that back. It has slowed down a little bit. We're back right at about that 2% growth to where the last couple years after COVID, we rebounded 4 to 5. So 2% is much more manageable for us. Of course, the unfortunate part of 2% of 50,000 is 1,000 kids. So that is the unfortunate part. But our enrollment's sitting about 51,000. We're finishing up TCAP testing next week, and so that is everybody hands on deck for that. Because you guys are at Health and Ed, and I don't want to get into a debate or the politics of this, our board did just approve an additional charter school application. So just wanted you to be aware of that. So.
How many charter schools are approved?
2 by the Rutherford County School Board, 1 that is approved by the Tennessee State Charter Commission. So you're looking at 3 potentially opening the same year.
Is anybody making any headway in purchasing land or moving forward? Do we know? In Smyrna? And there's a piece of land under contract at Manson Pike and 840. Is that an additional? That's the second piece?
That would be the one that is the state-run Rutherford Collegiate Prep. Rutherford Collegiate Prep, yep.
How many students do we think these, is there a?
Spring will look at eventually getting to 800, probably over a 2-year period. I think they'll start about 500. Chairman, now that you're saying that, they did reach out to me, obviously, because they are in Smyrna, so they're working a lot with the town of Smyrna. And they did want to, at our joint meeting, which I believe is our May meeting, Health and Ed and the school board, Jared wanted to come by and give a report to all of us, since we're all together, on what their timelines are for spring opening up, to give an update on that, if that would be something that you would allow and that would be okay.
I will entertain that and get back with you.
And West Hill Springs has been great to work with. Jared has come to every interview. He comes to just about every one of our board meetings. Of all the negatives you hear, they've been phenomenal to work with.
Thank you for
When is the
bringing
joint
that to our
meeting?
attention, to being a liaison for them.
Sorry, I was asking, when is that joint meeting that you?
I believe our May next meeting is the joint meeting to go over the budget. Is that right?
4th?
Yeah, 23rd?
23rd.
23rd.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, remind me, Trey, so that meeting is Board of Education. It's our meeting. The Board of Education is present, presenting their budget. Our budget committee is here, but we're the only ones with a vote. It's the joint session between Health and Ed and the Board of Education. And it's our meeting and our vote. Michael?
The current budget calendar has it at the historic courthouse, so we need to change that if you're going to have it at the school board. Okay, right, okay.
Thank you for those additional comments. Chairman Phillips?
I think the reason that it's always been a joint meeting is so that school board doesn't have to present it twice, and
Thank you.
members of the budget committee doesn't have to hear it twice. So it actually saves time and effort, and I think the budget committee is, although they don't vote, they're allowed to ask questions and to get clarification on that. So I think it's a good way to present the school budget to probably 14 members of the county commission, or almost 14 members of the county commission.
And I anticipate our agenda being, we will, unless there's something really critical, I would hope that it's just school board topics.
I was going to say, we have proposed this year that both budget and health and ed were to vote, so that we don't have to reconvene and have the same meeting twice.
As long as that's
the way
legal and
that's the way a lot of
appropriate by all
counties.
means. Yeah,
That's the way a lot of counties do it. Health and ed would always vote first as the normal process, and then budget would vote second. That's the way we wrote the calendar out there, but I mean, I just want to clarify.
I'm all for that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, because my recollection of being on those committees previously, that was
We did
not
not
the case.
schedule a second budget meeting to hear theirs for that reason, to go ahead, to save us from having to call a meeting just to go ahead and vote. I did check that with Nick, but that's the way several counties do it. I know that's a little different here, but it would save us some time. But then generally, health and ed would vote first as normal. Both would gavel in. We would take minutes for both committees.
Okay. And that was,
If that was proposed.
yeah, I think that's great. And it would not disrupt us. It would just, budget would have to have a longer meeting, I suppose. They'd have to sit in one and then have a vote on the other. So is there anything we need in anticipation of that? Is there a draft that the board or you guys would hand, or is there anything this group might think they wanted prior to that meeting?
So the school board will have to have, their budget is set to come to us by private act. That is a certain date. They will have that to us before then. I have spoke with Brian, the school's finance director. So budget committee, as in the past, will get a budget notebook, as in the past. And then we will add that to the budget notebook, and then of course have that on SharePoint and for this committee before that night to review. And of course, Brian will be here to present that portion. And then I'll also be here to talk about any of the tax rate or how it incorporates into that. And as Dr. Sullivan said, me and Brian have worked really well together. They've been great to work with since I've been here, trying to get all these moving pieces together with the TISA changing quite a bit for us. And it has changed stuff quite a bit.
I appreciate your help. I'm sorry we call you about every day, if not multiple times a day, so.
Commissioner Gooch?
When are you presenting the budget to the school board?
May 11th, I believe. We've had lots of conversations around. We had our budget retreat. We started in December discussing expenditure revenue, but May 11th is the official day.
And the reason I asked that, now in the past, has the health and ed voted that night to send it to budget, and budget meets on a different night? And the only reason I say that could be an advantage is if the public is hearing it, well, you've got two committees that's hearing it and voting the same night. And then instead of having one of the committees budget, having time to kind of digest it a little bit more. But I think if the public hears it on the 11th, then that could be fine. And of course, what I understand you saying, not going to be a lot of controversy to the budget.
Maintenance
So
of
that
effort's all we're requesting.
So, yeah, so.
Well, and let me say, you'll still have another vote, budget will still have another vote when they send it to commission that will include the schools there as well. So that would give, if there was any modification or changes, so the public would still have public comment to come and talk, just as normal. The Private Act requires them to have it to us by May 15th, which Brian has assured me they will. I think they're right on track. So we'll have it posted before then, too, on our SharePoint for anybody to look at even prior to the meeting, several days prior.
But the public would see it on the night you present it to school.
Chairman Phillips.
This is something that doesn't have to be contentious by any stretch of the imagination, but this is the opportunity for the county commission to ask challenging questions, okay? So new commissioners, it's not that we're intended to be disagreeable, but we're trying to get to bottom line type of things, to clarify certain things. What chairman of this commission wants to see is at zero-based budget, and the increases that you have, want those highlighted and why they're needed. Then the amount of last year's or this year's budget, which will be last year's budget, that we didn't spend all of it, why we didn't spend all of it, and why you're asking for the same amount, okay? Those are the type of things that we want to see as a commission. You budgeted a certain amount of money and you didn't spend it, you ended up probably transferring it someplace else. And we want an explanation of why it wasn't spent, and if it wasn't spent, why you're asking for the same amount again this year. Clarify those two things, increases, and if you didn't spend a budgeted amount, why you didn't spend it, and if you're asking for the same amount, why are you asking for the same amount since you didn't spend that amount last time? Those things you need to be prepared for, okay? Because I know there's some commissioners that are going to ask.
Respectfully, I'd also like to remind, if we're only asking for maintenance of effort, the commission doesn't have line item veto power.
Thank you.
So, the other part I do want to bring up with that, Commissioner Phillips, because it is a very good point. We are moving people that have not been in the right positions into some right positions. So you may see an increase and a decrease just because, for example, we have transportation that is currently assigned, instead of being a transportation router, they may be assigned as a secretary. And so Brian and I have been fixing every one of those people.
That's exactly what we're looking for, is an explanation.
Perfect.
Any other business for Health and Ed, or excuse me, for Board of Education? Commissioner Oliver.
Maybe not necessary for the board, but just ask a question regarding Chairman Phillips' remarks. Is that standard procedure for everybody that's presenting budgets?
We're talking about 75 to 78% of the budget, and we're talking about a lot of money. And when you see the pages, it will choke a horse. So it's hard to go through that. But to get to the bottom line, we want to know what the difference is between this year and last year. And to make things more open and transparent, if you didn't spend, we want to know why you didn't spend it. And if you didn't spend it, why are you asking for the same amount this year? So we just want some clarification as to try to get to that bottom line. It's not adversarial, it's not challenging, but we just want an explanation of that. It's something that they prepare for, okay?
The whole commission, Commissioner Oliver, that's the whole commission has an opportunity. If you'll have an opportunity at Health and Ed next month,
Sure.
then Budget will have a debate, and then Budget will present that to the entire commission. There's another opportunity there. So I think if I heard you correctly, you will have every one of us will have an opportunity for those drill down questions if we so choose at different meetings.
Sure, I understand the questioning aspect. I was just asking, again, as you noted, this is a first time. So I'm just asking, is that the procedure for every director that comes to present their budget, that they present their request, and if they didn't spend it last time, why? I'm just asking if that's the normal procedure, not necessarily specific to Board of Education.
Exactly right.
Okay.
It doesn't happen every time. Some of the, like planning as an example, their budget is one page compared to how many pages?
70-something.
Yeah, 70-something pages. So it's pretty easy to go through that to compare one to the other. This one is a lot more challenging and a lot more difficult. But all of the sheriff's department will have that same opportunity to ask the sheriff, in essence, what he is doing. Speaking of the sheriff, I think Governor Lee is or something like that relates to safety, security, and most of it's in personnel SROs. Since we have SROs, what is our opportunity to get some of that funding?
So we have actually talked to a couple of our state reps about that. In the past, when SRO grants were made available to districts, if you had SROs, you were not eligible to apply for the grant. We have been told we would be eligible, and for districts that already haven't, it would be a reimbursement back to Sheriff's Department. So that would be that'd be a huge win too, because we realize the Sheriff's Department has a burden for the school system. And just back to Commissioner Phillips' point, once our board passes our budget, I will that very next week open up my calendar completely for any commissioner that wants to come and talk individually about our budget. I believe in transparency, so we are more than happy to schedule that, Brian and myself.
Let me just say, sometimes those one-on-ones are very, very informative. So I've attended, and no telling how many of those things. So if you have the opportunity, it probably would be a good idea to spend an hour or so there with the superintendent and his staff.
Mr. Smith.
I want to clarify something for Commissioner Oliver. One of the differences in the schools is Dr. Sullivan comes as the whole school department as a whole to present their entire funds budget. They have multiple funds. The difference with the county is when the budget committee meets, each department head comes and presents a category of a fund. So that's what's going to be a little different here. Is in they're going to bring an entire, however many pages, and it's their 141 fund is going to be $500 million, and you're going to look at that as a whole, in one night. Whereas all of the county departments are going to meet over 2 to 3 weeks. Each department head comes before and talks about a literal one-pager. So I think just to give the distinct difference, that's kind of the difference here with the schools, with them being kind of unique in that sense, is you're going to see the entire 141, the entire 143, the entire 177, all in one night there. So that's kind of why it's a little different, and they prepare it differently there.
And these meetings are televised for the public as well?
Yes.
Budget meetings?
Mm-hmm. So that budget calendar, I think I emailed it to you the other day.
You did.
So most of, I think historically have been in 205. Sometimes, they could be in here. But, it's once or twice a week. It's usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays or whenever there's not another committee meeting. Me and the mayor will sit in there with the budget committee, and department heads come up one by one. And depending on the size of the budget, the sheriff's obviously takes a little longer. They've got multiple categories. Planning and engineer, to Chairman Phillips's point, maybe doesn't take as long as the sheriff, if there's no requested increases, there's things like that. So that's just to give you a little bit of how the process would work there, from difference from the schools to the county departments.
Thanks for the clarity.
Thank you. And I will just add these comments to the minutes. I'd take a motion to approve Dr. Sullivan's report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment if there's no new business.